Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Today, we're going to be breaking down the second round of the NBA playoffs. We've got 4 series that I'm really excited to get into. Going to talk about each of the matchups individually, what we saw from each team in that first round, and kind of giving ultimately my prediction for who I think comes out of each of these series to face off in the conference finals. Only 8 teams left. I will say that to my own credit, because, I don't give myself a lot of credit around here, I did correctly predict all of the series in the first round. So these are 4 matchups that I've been anticipating and looking forward to for a while. And I did talk a little bit about what these series might look like in that initial playoff predictions video. But at the same time, a lot of things have changed. There's injuries. There were some teams that played better or worse than expected. And so going into this one, I really have a lot to say about each series. So I won't waste too much time. I think a lot of these could go 6 or 7 games. So let's break them down. We're going to start off with the Suns Mavericks series, but real quick, I want to say if you do enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Let's go ahead and get into Suns Mavericks. So starting off with the Phoenix Suns, they were the team that I picked to win the championship in my initial video, and I still think that they're probably the best team in the league in my opinion. I'm not very down on them from that first round series. I know a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this Suns team that was the 1 seed and had the best record in the league is going to 6 games against the Pelicans, but the Devin Booker injury was huge. It put a lot of stress on the rest of the roster. Some of those bench guys didn't quite perform that won't normally play in a series like against the Mavericks with a healthy Devin Booker, so I don't think that that's that big of a deal. I'm really not at all put off by the 6 games. I think that Pelicans team was better than their record indicated, and to lose a guy who was an MVP candidate for part of the season in Devin Booker is not an easy feat to turn around and figure that out on the fly, but the Suns managed to. Chris Paul had some great games in his absence, and even in that game where he came back in game 6, he really wasn't the same Devin Booker that we've seen. So Chris Paul stepping up in that role, shooting 14 of 14 for 33 points was incredible. It was really impressive, and the way that Mikal Bridges played those last couple games, DeAndre Ayton had some fun moments. I still think this Suns team is really good. I'm not at all put off by that 6-game series against the Pelicans. I think that was a really tough Pelicans team that in most other seasons, fully healthy with that roster for a year, is a team that could really make some noise in the West. So all in all, I'm not put off by them at all. And in terms of the Mavericks, I expected them to beat the Jazz in 6 games. I think that was my prediction. But I was impressed. I was really impressed by the Mavericks. I think I'm a little bit higher on them than I was initially now, mainly because of the play of Jalen Brunson, who stepped up incredibly in Luka's absence to help them take a game. I think maybe even 2 games, if I'm remembering right, without him, which was huge. The way that he's played, if he's able to continue to play like that, the 3-guard trio of Jalen Brunson, Luka Doncic, and Spencer Dinwiddie is a lineup that I think could really give the Suns a couple problems if their shooters are hitting shots, and of course if Luka's being Luka. The Mavericks are a tough team to beat on any given night, but all that being said, I still think the Suns are the better team. I trust in Chris Paul, I trust in Devin Booker, Monty Williams. I just think the Mavericks have been really good this year, and if they get a couple more years under their belt, or they just bring in another piece alongside Luka Doncic, I think that they could be a team that could make noise. They do have the potential to win this series, I think. It's really going to come down to, can the shooters hit their shots, which has always been the problem for the Dallas Mavericks. It's, if their shooters aren't hitting shots, are they going to be able to win these games against these top-tier championship teams? You've got Mikal Bridges, who's probably going to get the Luka Doncic assignment, so I'm really excited to see how the 2 of them match up. One of the best defensive players against one of the best offensive players in the league. I think that's going to be super fun. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I am going to stick with my initial prediction from my first video where I said Suns in 6. I think that's a pretty safe bet there. I think this one could go 7, and hell, I could see the Mavericks taking this one if Devin Booker's a little slow to get back into action. Like I said, he wasn't quite Devin Booker in that first game back from injury. So if he's not quite up to full health, maybe there's a chance that the Mavs steal an early game or 2, and that really flips things on its head. But I'm still going to stick with the Suns. I still think that they're the better team. The Mavs, though, you can't sleep on them. Do not sleep on the Mavericks. They could come out of this series, and that's coming from someone who picked the Suns to win the championship. I really do like this Mavs squad. I think Jason Kidd has done a great job. A lot of their role players are stepping up at the right time. It's just a matter of, I think I trust the Suns' consistency a little bit more, and the fact that they've been to the finals. This is the first time that most guys on this roster have been to a second round playoff series for the Dallas Mavericks. So I think the Suns having that extra experience will kind of help them get over the hump there. So I'm picking the Suns once again, similar to my initial predictions video. Suns in 6 is what I'm going with. Next, Heat Sixers, and this is one that is really going to come down to Joel Embiid's health. I think when Joel Embiid is healthy, initially I predicted Sixers in 7. The problem is we don't know like how much Embiid's going to play. Right now, he is ruled as, I believe he's expected to be out for game 1 with an orbital fracture in his face, as well as a concussion that came from a Pascal Siakam elbow late in that closeout game. A lot of people are giving Doc Rivers some heat for leaving in Joel Embiid despite being up a lot late in the game. Regardless, he's probably going to miss some time in this series, if not 1 game, maybe even 2 or 3, or hell, maybe even the whole series. We really don't know, because all we know is that it's indefinitely. Knowing Joel Embiid, he's playing through that thumb injury right now. He's played through a torn meniscus. I don't think if Embiid can be on the court, I think he's going to be on the court. So I do think he will come back for this series as soon as he clears concussion protocols. I think he comes out with a mask, unless there's a risk of making that injury worse. The last time he had one of these orbital fractures, he was out for, I believe, a month. But being the playoffs, I just don't see Embiid as a guy that's going to sit out. If he's physically able to play, I think he'll try and play. So I think Embiid does come back in this one. But to me, that really hurts the Sixers' chances. The Sixers needed to come in, take some early games, steal back home court advantage, in my opinion. They had a great showing against the Raptors. They're a team that's very hit or miss a lot of nights, and a lot of that comes down to the play of those peripheral guys outside of Joel Embiid. James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris. How are those guys playing? Danny Green, is he hitting some threes? So there's a lot of different things to factor in there, and without Joel Embiid being healthy, that team is obviously so much worse because he's an MVP caliber player, but just the difference in the level of play around those guys. Joel Embiid elevates them so much. So while there is still a lot of talent on that roster without Embiid, if he's hurt, those guys aren't going to be nearly as effective. Harden is going to get a lot more pressure. Tyrese Maxey isn't going to have Embiid to play off of like he typically does. Tobias Harris isn't going to get as many wide open looks as he's been getting and was getting in that Raptors series. So if Embiid's hurt for any extended period of time, if he misses like game 1 or maybe even just the first 2 games, I still think the Sixers can take this one. And if he does come back within the first couple games, I might even pick the Sixers to win. I really liked what I saw from them when they're consistent. The problem is the Heat really did show a lot of great things in that series against the Hawks. Jimmy Butler showed that he really can lock in offensively. Of course, it was against a Hawks team that is kind of a turnstile defensively, so we'll see if he's able to replicate that against like the likes of Matisse Thybulle. Tobias Harris played some great defense as well. Danny Green's a pretty solid defender, so as well as, of course, having Joel Embiid patrolling down low, so we'll see if he's able to replicate that. Bam Adebayo had some really good moments. Victor Oladipo had a great closeout game, so I like what I saw from the Heat, and if Joel Embiid is out for any extended period of time, I think the Heat are going to take this one. You cannot mess around with this Heat team. If you give them any like opening, any sign of life, they're going to come in and snatch it away from you. I do think their health does factor into things though. Kyle Lowry dealing with an injury as well as Jimmy Butler. I believe they're both supposed to play as of right now for game 1, but just having those lingering injuries could take them down a little bit. There's risk of re-injury or needing to sit out a couple games, so we'll see what their health is like on that front. But all in all, just with the Joel Embiid injury and the way that the Heat kind of destroyed the Hawks at a lot of times, I'm going to go with the Heat for right now. I think if Embiid is able to come back and play pretty early in this series, I think that the Sixers, I'll say that if Embiid comes back within the first 2 games, I'm going Sixers in 7. If he doesn't, then I'm going to go Heat in 6. That's what I'm going to go with for my prediction for this series. I know it's kind of a weird cop-out, but that is a really big thing in this series, so we'll see what happens. Third, we have Bucks versus Celtics. This is one that once again is being impacted in a big way by an injury to an all-star. Chris Middleton is not expected to play in this series. I made a whole video breaking down this series and I even posted it, which for some reason YouTube cut off like the last 30 seconds of that video. So if you saw that one and you're like, why did this just end in the middle of a sentence? That is why. But all in all, just that whole video is kind of nullified by the fact that Chris Middleton is probably not going to play in this series. And even with the Chris Middleton being healthy, like I think this one was going to kind of be like a dogfight. The Celtics, I'm higher on them now than I was, of course, because of the sweep of the Brooklyn Nets. I always thought the Celtics were a championship caliber team, but I think in my initial video, I picked Bucks in 6. I don't feel the same. I think right now the Bucks kind of like struggled a little bit to really get going against the Bulls at times, and you can't have that against the Boston Celtics, both because they're a great defense, but because they can actually make you pay, unlike the Bulls, who were not really able to make the Bucks pay when they struggled or started off slowly. They've got better interior defenders, Boston does, than the Bulls did to guard Giannis, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him now without Chris Middleton. Drew Holiday, can he step up and be productive on a consistent basis? Who's like their third option now? Is it like Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Grayson Allen? Who is going to be scoring for that team in the absence of Chris Middleton, who gives you 20 points per game and is notoriously good against the Celtics? So he's not in the equation anymore. He also is another option that you don't have against Jason Tatum to try and guard him. So I think his absence is absolutely huge for this series. And because of his absence, I'm going to pick Celtics in 6. I think all in all, if Middleton was healthy, this would be a 7-game series that's kind of a toss-up. But even though I don't like betting against Giannis is, in my opinion, the best player in the world, but what I saw from this Celtics team compared to what I saw from this Bucks team and the big injury, I'm not going to pick against the Celtics in that scenario. I'm going to go Celtics in 6. Finally, we've got Warriors versus Grizzlies. The Golden State Warriors were pretty dominant most games against the Denver Nuggets. Of course, the Nuggets did take that one game, and Jokic was phenomenal, but the Grizzlies really don't have that interior presence like the Nuggets did to really put some of that pressure down low on the Golden State Warriors. They showed off that new death lineup with Steph, Poole, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond at the 5, and they even started that in that last game. That's a scary lineup, especially for a Grizzlies team that they can't really punish that lack of size, because while Steven Adams gives you that size, as someone who saw the Thunder go up against the small ball Rockets when they were running PJ Tucker at center a few years back, Steven Adams really isn't able to take advantage of those size mismatches, and Draymond Green, just in general, is a phenomenal defender who, if Steven Adams tries to back him down, he'll probably poke the ball away 9 times out of 10. So they can't really punish that lack of size on that lineup. So that's kind of a question mark for them. In addition, if they do run that small ball lineup, is Steven Adams once again going to be neutralized? He was a big reason why Ja Morant was so successful in the regular season, setting screens, running dribble handoffs with him. The two of those guys work really well together, but this Warriors team is another one where Steven Adams just might not be able to play that much because he's going to get played off the court. There's really no one that is like a slow, big center on the Warriors like Steven Adams is. They've got like Kevon Looney, but he's a lot quicker and more athletic. I don't think Adams is going to be much of a factor again, which I think leads Ja Morant to struggle. We saw that in the Timberwolves series. He kind of struggled to really get his shot and get going. He did have a couple pretty solid games, but all in all, his overall performance across the series was not phenomenal. It wasn't really up to the caliber that we've seen of Ja Morant, and I do think Steven Adams' absence played into that a little bit. The Warriors have good defenders to go up against Ja Morant too. I believe that they have that team chemistry. They've been here. They've done this before, and what I saw from them, the dominance that they showed, I'm not going to pick against the Warriors. Compared to the Grizzlies, who struggled a little bit against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and honestly, if the Timberwolves didn't blow like 4, 5, 6 double-digit leads, could maybe not even be in this position, which I know is weird to say because of course they did, and you know, all these what-ifs and everything like that, but the Grizzlies were put in some really tough spots, and if the Warriors get up in that position, they're not going to blow those leads. The Warriors are far too good of a team to blow those leads. They're not going to give you those second chances like the Timberwolves did. They're going to shut the door, beat you by 30 or 40 if they go up by 20 pretty early on. So for me, I think this Warriors team is just too good. I liked what I saw from them a lot. So I think it's going to set up a Golden State Warriors versus Phoenix Suns Western Conference Finals, with the Warriors beating the Grizzlies in 6 games is what I'm going to go with. I just think that, like I mentioned, they're just great on both sides of the ball. They're deep. They've got their star players playing really well compared to the Grizzlies, who had some games where they struggled a little bit. Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know how he's going to stay in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if he fouls out of a few of them, continues to get into foul trouble. It's going to be interesting to see if Steven Adams is able to stay on the court, which could help with the whole Jaren Jackson fouling out thing. But all in all, I'm going to go with the Warriors. I just think they're the better team. So, my full predictions, Suns in 6, Heat in 6 if Joel Embiid isn't healthy for the first few games, Sixers in 7 if Embiid does come back pretty early, Bucks versus Celtics in 6, and then the Golden State Warriors in 6 games over the Grizzlies. So I've got all basically like all 6-game series. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these go the other way. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on these series. Let me know what your predictions are in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to the second round of the playoffs. A lot of videos coming up, both recapping the games from those, as well as making videos talking about the teams that have been eliminated now. I know a lot of y'all have been enjoying those videos. So if you want to see a specific team talked about, let me know in the comment section below. But for right now, I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.